Welcome to the Titan York Show. Thank you for coming here today. I've got my esteemed guests, Anthony Clifford and Howard. Are you guys here?
Hey guys, how's everyone doing?
All right. So this one's an interesting one. First of all, I want to thank Howard for joining me. And we have different rules on this on this webinar that are not just our titles, and I'll get into that in a minute. So this is what's curbing the work from home trend, and this is something that we're personally going through in terms of dealing with it for our employees, and it reverberates out across the entire world. Every owner of every business and every landlord is going to be going through the same sort of thing. So let me first start by saying, Howard, welcome. Howard is the vice president of Harkel Office Furniture, and he's going to be taking us through some furniture solutions. Anthony Clifford is vice president of Titan York, and he's been with me for 12 years, unfortunately. And but we all have different roles. So here's the first role that you're going to see. I'm the owner of a company, and I'm paying for space, and my agent productivity is down, and I'm going to want people to come back. Anthony, who is amazingly, his wife is pregnant, due in October. Congratulations, Anthony.
Thank you.
And he is absolutely fearful of the office, and understandably so. And Howard, who's going to be talking about Furniture First Solutions, is also an owner and is going to be talking about, how he perceives things in terms of employees coming back and what that effects are. So what I want to do is first let Howard talk about Harkel and just sort of talk about himself. I'm going to pass on to you, Howard.
All right, thank you. Just to let you know, I'm Howard. Harkel's been supplying office furniture to the GTA and for over 40 years. We've seen SARS, we've seen recessions. This is probably the most we've ever seen to affect business, but it's challenging, and through webinars like this, it's very educational. It's great.
So what I'm going to do is let's get into the topic. So the first one is employee sense of fear. It really is, it's something that we're going to be talking about. Furniture solutions for safety, my bold ideas, and I actually have a personal story at the end of this too. I want to share, and the takeaways, and we're opening up for some questions. So
I'm going to jump in really quickly. There is the Q&A tab. So if any attendees have any questions, please feel free to pop them in there, and we'll certainly be trying to get to all those at the end of the
yeah, and also we have a YouTube channel, so feel free to go to the YouTube channel and subscribe, because that makes us feel special. So let's get going. Okay, so right now, this is not the new normal. Like, what you're experiencing from our perspective is we're not there yet. Everyone's been barricaded in their homes for the last 3 months. There's this potential fear of the outside world, which is any place beyond the front door and supermarket, I guess. But that's not unwarranted. Like, that's a real fear, and it's based in reality. And today is actually not May 21st. Today is March 16th. And yesterday was March 16th, and the day before that was March 16th. It's not tomorrow yet. We're still frozen in our time, in our geography, in everything that we're doing. We're still frozen, and it feels like it's like 6 o'clock of March 16th when we all went into our homes. And the reason why I say it's 5 o'clock, it's starting to thaw. Some people are back to work. There's way more traffic on the road than there used to be. I can tell you that as of today or yesterday, my email box is just full of subleases and new spaces for lease and new buildings for sale, more so than you would have on a normal thing. So we know that people are now moving forward in its own way. But we're still in a strange sort of world. And, you know, one of the things that as a business owner, and this is for many, where working from home is not for every company. And Twitter just put out that they're going to do everyone working from home, and Open Text was going to get rid of 50% of their brick and mortar, and they're working from home. So the tech sector has really embraced it, and but there are many companies that it doesn't work for. So if you're a company that wants to get their people back into the office, then you have one more challenge. And it's not just making your space safe. It's actually managing the employee fear of returning to work. And you know, there's a bit of push and pull. Like at the end of the day, the choice to work from home is the employer's choice as it relates to the employee. There's kind of law around that now. There's law around that. But you know, that's not the way the world works. The world works that I have employees, they're trained, they're part of, you know, it's a culture, it's a family. You don't want to retrain people. You're not going to say to your employee, look, if you work from home, you're fired. That's not the context. But there is a requirement that you're creating a culture for your companies that needs to work. So, you know, Anthony's here because he is the one at Titan York right now, and he's happy to put his hand up to say, look, I'm very fearful of other people. And
I'm going to jump in
on Anthony.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the point is that there's different levels of anxiety of what it means to go back to work. And I think that's heavily based on perception of, you know, exposure to knowledge of what this situation really is, knowledge of protocol going back. And there are going to be different ranges of anxiety. And whether they are correct or not, they should be addressed. They should be spoken about openly, and employers should be, you know, we spoke on the webinar last week, you know, a great idea is to put out a survey to start to sort of gauge where some of these concerns are. But everyone's going to have a different viewpoint on it. And, you know, we're going to talk about a couple of those issues that are listed here. And I think one of the most obvious ones or potentially most effective is going to be the coworker behavior. It's important that everyone's on the same page about what it means to be back in the office, what those regulations are, and those regulations have to be set from the top up, being from the employer. So, you know, having trust in your coworker that they're doing the right things and having the right behavior is going to be a really strong point.
I agree, and I think, you know, like Anthony, in many ways, you know, is usually always right. So in as much as that, I really do listen to what he has to say, and I pretty much do what he tells me to do. And but let me ask you something, Anthony. In that, like, I had to reevaluate my perspective on employees' perceptions and fears. And in fact, I had a very personal one, and again, I'll get into that in a bit. But of this list in front of you, like, what are you afraid of? What's the most? There's a list on the screen. What do you fear the most?
I mean, I think fear is an interesting word to describe it. I don't know if it's fear, but there's certainly a level of uncertainty. And those are very much having to do with the controllable area or the non-controllable areas, being your elevators, getting into the elevators, or people respecting that, because it's so uncontrollable. It's no longer just your company. It's all the companies in that building. So there's a strong point. And I think, you know, I mentioned it before about the coworker behavior, coworker beliefs, that I think everyone should be on the same page. I think it's important that, you know, and I'm speaking this on behalf of management of Titan York, that it's the employer's responsibility to stress about these items so that the employees don't have to.
So one of the things that we're an essential service, so effectively we can be in the office. And we haven't been for the most part. And, you know, one of those things is like, hey, you know, Dan, you know, get on the subway. But for the first time, leave your home, go on the subway. You know, open the door to the office building. Push the elevator button. Get on the elevator, push the button, select the floor. You know, go to the printer, use the kitchen, go to the closed meeting room, use the bathroom, right? And what I've understood is that there's sort of in order to get people out of March 16th and to if you hunker down for so long in the same sort of very safe place, I think the conversation is that one of the things that we're looking at and how do you get people moving is get them in frequent visits, like have them do those things as a first. Like don't come in with everybody in the office, one person at a time, drip, bring them in to actually experience what it is to be in the office. I think one of the other parts is, ensure sort of more circulation area. And that has, it has absolute effects on how much space you need to bring everybody back and how much space you have. And then secure your personal space. And I think this is going into the furniture. I'm going to come back for a second, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to get Howard to talk in a second. But you're right. Like you got to have written protocols, and I think they have to be communicated and they have to be ironed out. Like call your employees, have personal conversations with them, do a survey, find out what their fears are, and go down that road. But again, I'm going to go back, and that's what we're starting to do at Technorg, is to bring people in one at a time kind of thing and have them experience it. But I want to go on to the furniture and the personal space, because I think when I'm in my space, I need, if they're going to sit there and focus, there's no leasehold versus furniture solution. There really is only a furniture solution, because a leasehold solution is it takes up too much time and it's expensive. So one of the things is that, and I'm going to go back to Howard in a second. Leases are inelastic. You can't just get rid of your space. Employers need to increase productivity and working from home, like we just talked about. So I have a space, we're paying for it, we're not getting productivity, we want to bring those people back in, and I'm going to be paying for the space for a long time, and I can't just sublease it because you're going into an unknown demand market. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best is to really bring those people back, and I'm going to be first starting with a furniture solution. So in that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Howard, and to talk about kind of the personal workspace and how to make people feel safe in the space.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. Just to start up, again, Aaron, just like you, I'm the owner of my company. The entrepreneurial spirit tells me, why did I take 20,000 square feet and why do I have 50 employees to have them work from home? And you're right. In some of the larger tech companies, yes, they can get away with people working from home. In our organization, the efficiency isn't that great. And even though our productivity right now might be only at 70% because of this, if it is 70%, we're finding it hard to communicate because a lot of our departments multitask. So, and again, that communication is what makes us successful. So to have people working from home, which we do, currently, we're also an essential business because we look after healthcare and hospitals, but we have 8 people and we rotate people. We have developed a protocol, which we'll share some of it with you as we go along, but getting my staff back here would be, is my ultimate goal, and we're gonna figure out how to do this. So a lot of you have seen all these articles that are sent out with 6-foot radius, and what does that mean to staff? In this particular case, on this slide, if you look at the option 1, we've used a 6-foot radius where we have these workstations are 6 feet long. So we know that from my mouth to the person to the right of me or left of me, their mouth is 6 feet. And we'll get into that. We'll get into the ways of managing that after. We've also given 6-foot aisleways. This is an actual client that was going to be signing with us in end of March. They still need their 200 and something people on the floor. This is only an excerpt of the floor plan. So how do we help them out? They can't function having 50 people or 100 people. They need this staff count. One of the ways we talked about it is the 12-foot radius, and this is what Aaron was talking about, which is how do we make people feel safe? And we make them feel safe by onboarding. So for instance, we can start off with option 2, all the infrastructure is in place that all we have to do is pop in another desk to make it option 1. So we've tried to accommodate them and also help them with their process on how they can bring people back. Safety is number 1, and not have to give up floor space or compromise floor space, so that if this pandemic is over in 6 months or a year after a vaccine is found, then we're back to, quote, old normal, new normal, whatever that looks like. So that's where we've started in the planning. If we can go to the next one. So the workstation itself, the one on the left, the before, this is exactly what they were planning on buying. So low panels, we're going to talk about collaboration, height adjustable desks. We've seen the trend. It was great. We went from, 10 years ago from 250 square foot per person, now down to 100 to 120 square foot per person. This is where we have to start working with our staff to make them feel comfortable at their stations, because this is where they have to sit for the timeline. So what we've done is we've augmented the workstations you'll see on the right by adding some plexiglass sneeze guards and increasing the height. But by using plexiglass or Lexan, we still keep the light in the room. We still keep that functionality of right to light and the openness of the office place. We can go to the next one. Perfect. This is also what we run into, and this is a layout that a small company called Google uses. On the before, you'll see that these stations were made for height adjustability. We can move them around. If we're working as a team, we can put them side by side. We can put them in that space. So rather than have to change the space, we were able to isolate them with the drawing on the right, or the rendering on the right. So again, we're trying to keep costs down. We're trying to maximize and trying to figure out ways of keeping the employees safe. Social distance guards, very, very much in demand, not only for reception desks, but interview rooms. When we're still doing hiring, and as a matter of fact, there was an article on Indeed last night that said they're still hiring in certain areas, maybe not in restaurant and retail, but admin. People are still looking for good people. And at this point in time, it's an opportunity to find people that may be out of work that could benefit your company. So we're finding interview rooms are now using these, where we've taken maybe a round boardroom table out, and we're going to have a person behind a desk, and then the guest chair will be 3 feet away from it behind the glass. So it's still critical and important for people to be able to see people, see their facial reactions in an interview process. Wayfinding. This is the touchiest subject. Elevators. The way we move around through the office place. Again, we're going to have to figure this out for most organizations. And as Anthony and Aaron said, it's going to be the responsibility of the employer and the management team to make sure everybody follows the protocol. It's easy now to, get out of your office and, in this particular case, walk left and get to the printer. Well, that won't happen anymore. Your steps will be up, which is going to be good, but that can't happen. And you raised a good point about management being on it. In our COVID policy, what we've done is we've used each department. So we have our logistics, customer service, CAD department, accounting. We've put a police officer in each of those to manage the staff. And you're going to have to be creative. But, we'll get through this, as Doug Ford says.
So I thought this one was interesting.
Yes.
I skipped one of your slides because I thought this one was really
good. This is cool. So multiple staircases in buildings now are going to be designated one up, one down. We're going to see people taking the stairs more often. If you're on the second or third floor, you're not going to wait if there's only 2 or 3 people allowed in an elevator. So maybe we're going to get a little more fit at the same time.
Yeah.
Work off the quarantine pounds.
COVID-15, they call it. The 15 pounds.
Mine's maybe more like 19.
All right. Again, these are ideas. We work with these companies to help create this for your office. But it's critical and it's important. And again, it's so important to making sure your staff feels safe. The onboarding, bringing staff in slowly, getting them used to the routine. We've ordered these welder's shields, protective glass for our staff, and they know that when they leave their workstation, those have to go on. Go ahead.
No. So I'm going to go back to this one right here, and I'm going to tell you that I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he's with a bank, and they have something like 300 employees in an area that's all open workstations. The conversation becomes, you're going to need double the space, right? Like if a bank is trying to bring people back, they're going to need double the space that they have. And if they only have, if that's 4 floors of Scotia Plaza, right, you're going to need 8 floors. Like it's like it's an incredible impact that this is going to have. And furniture is going to make people feel safe. So again, this is all about like employers want employees back. Employees are scared to come back. Employers have to make people feel good to come back. They have to, one, get them acclimated by bringing them back in dribs and drabs. But at the same time, once they bring them back, they really can't put them all in the space anyway. So, that's really a, and I think you're right about wayfinding is that's going to be a huge part about making people feel safe. Mm-hmm. Like, know that if I'm walking down this aisle, Herb isn't going to be bumping into me. And I think that's a big part of it. But, I think, sorry, I keep bouncing around. I think this is one of the problems is that, there's not enough space to accommodate the physical distancing. And, you're going to see, I think you're going to see people coming to you saying, how do I fit more, how do I cut the distance down? That'll be the most interesting challenge you're going to have, I think. It's because I can't fit, I need to bring in more people back. I'm sorry. You got to find different solutions. I think you're going to be pushed.
It is a concern. It's a concern more for the small to medium enterprises. From the 20,000 square feet and under, it is difficult for them. When you mention the bank, you're going to see some early retirements. You might see some packages. They might get rid of some redundancy. But in a small to medium organization, it's very hard to do that because there are a lot of people that wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
Those are going to be the biggest challenges, but they're also the easiest challenges. We've seen over the last few years where, we've built in collaboration spaces into organizations where we've taken up a percentage of their floor space to have informal meetings or larger lunch areas and coffee areas. Well, we don't need a lunch area anymore. In fact, you know, our lunchroom is now off limits. And what we've done is we've given each department a timeline to use the lunchroom to warm up food or grab stuff from the fridge. And it's 2 people at a time. So, you know, if I've taken 10% of my space just for that, well, maybe I can use that, readjust the space, not get out of the lease. Maybe the landlords will help us accommodate some construction, which we can talk about at another time. But there might be existing floor space that we can turn into workstation space or spread it out.
We spoke a lot about that actually in the past couple of weeks, being those sort of breakout areas, your couch areas, your foosball table, or even boardrooms or kitchens are going to have to be utilized in order to fit people in, because you need to utilize every square foot you can, and that's really going to be a thing.
Didn't you? Was it you who said that you took out your boardroom and turned it into instead of having like 5 people sit at a boardroom table, you put everyone in individual couch seating? Was that you?
Yeah, it's actually one of our clients who said, look, I've got this boardroom that accommodates 6 people, but we're sitting close, but the room is big enough, and ordered half a dozen lounge chairs on casters with tablet arms for their laptops. Innovative.
That's smart. So I think, you know, it is going to come back to space again. And I can tell you that we don't, the one thing about COVID-19, its financial paradigm and being on March 16th still, that, you know, you can make all kinds of prophecies. And we've made a couple, we've been right. We haven't been wrong yet, which is good. But, you know, one of the ones that we've heard is that, oh, you know, the suburban markets for office space are toast. And forget about it, because everyone's going to work from home, and the back office people, will just do that. And then on the flip side of that, we hear like, oh no, everybody's looking for space in the suburban markets so that the back office has somewhere to go. They don't have to take transit, and they don't have to come downtown and go in an elevator. They can be close to. So it depends on which trend you're going for. And, you know, there are those people that, again, everyone's going to work from home from now on. Well, I don't know if that's true. You know, it might be more apt for tech companies and that they can do that. But, you know, one of the things at New York is that we have this culture. And it's a great culture, and we get to do things. We go golfing. Once a year, we take the entire company, we get it on a Porter airline, and we fly to a city for one night and fly back in the next day. You know, we go, we get a limo bus and we go somewhere. Like we have dinners, we have lunches together, we eat. It's a real sense of community, and and you're going to find other organizations that really are, you know, want to engross that sense of community. And I think we even talked about this before.
I was going to say, like, I think, you know, when everyone's talking about working from home, you know, there's going to be a sort of grappling of horns between the employer's perspective and the employee's perspective. And the employee's perspective is always, at this point, for many, is going to weigh towards working from home because it's comfortable to sit at a computer in my pajamas. And I think, you know, the productivity side, there's an argument for either way. But as you mentioned, that corporate culture, that companies spend not only large amounts of time, but vast amounts of money as well to invest into it. And it's not just the after work, you know, that trip that we take once a year. It's hanging around the water cooler, you know, having the chats, becoming a cohesive team with your coworkers, and working from home. Sure, you can save some money on a rental front, but there is a cost to that as well. And I think many companies are going to struggle to maintain that corporate culture. And that's been the hot topic for years. How do you build that and maintain that culture? And now we're talking about, okay, go work from home and we'll have a Zoom call at once a week to connect. It's just not the same thing.
So I have this client, and I have 2 clients. So one client's like, I'm loving this. I'm working from home. I'm having the best time ever. And he's home alone. There's no one else to bother him. I have another, a CFO. He says, okay, I got I got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. My wife and I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We both start work. We work until about 8 o'clock when the kids wake up. We have breakfast. And I take the kids for 1 hour, an hour and a half. Then she takes them for an hour and a half. Then we kind of stop for lunch. Then I take it for an hour and a half. Then she takes it for an hour and a half. Then I take it for an hour and a half. She takes it for an hour and a half. I dinner, put the kids to bed, work till 11 o'clock at night. I said, how's your marriage? He says, we haven't talked to each other. It's just, and it's you know, it's just the way, it's just the family life in this frozen timeline, which will change eventually. But, and then like, I just can't wait to get to an office. And then again, I'm another friend that I don't ever want to go back to the office. So I think it's going to depend on which person. But either way, I you know, in the short term, the existing space that we have can't accommodate all of our people if we want to bring them back. That's a reality for almost every company. We can't accommodate social distancing in our space right now. So we're trying to grapple with that. And, you know, we want to get that culture going back. We want to get the productivity back. But we are physically at Tight New York and many other companies that we know of, and I'm in the real estate business, we're stuck. So, you know, we're left with hybrid, relocate to larger premises, take on, we don't want to spend more money. I mean, people don't have the money to spend more money. So how do we do it? And again, space is inelastic. We have a lease. We just can't hand back the keys to the landlord. That is, unless we're going to default on our lease and get sued and shut down the company and do all kinds of stuff, you know, we're not going to do that. That's, you know, we're here for forever. And, you know, we hold to all of our obligations. And so, you know, we're trying to figure that out ourselves. And again, like, you know, we did the space calc. I'm not going to go through it again, but you can see, like, just in the, you know, in the open workstation, how much more square footage, you know, this company would need you know, to go from, we need extra 1,700 square feet to accommodate, right? And you're increasing that stuff. So I'm not going to get into that.
I think, you know, Howard, you'll probably have quite a few conversations about, I mean, because you could space out furniture in the open workspace, open work areas. But I think a lot of conversation is going to be the conversion of those common areas that we spoke about, being the boardroom, the kitchens, and sometimes those rooms are not your standard sizing. And in order to knock down a wall and open it up or build a wall is timely, it's expensive, this sort of thing. So are you seeing a lot of different designs for furniture specific for that, or is it sort of adaptations to existing?
We're getting calls all day for retrofitting existing spaces. That's number one. In terms of the new stuff, you know, some of the projects that were a go since February, March, April, they're now saying, hold on, how do we accommodate this? What does it look like now? What does it look like in the future? And as you guys know, when they're negotiating space or you're looking for space, you're working it off of a head count or what the company wants to be. These companies are coming to you not to say, hey, I've got 50 people and I want 46 to work at home, find me space. That's not what corporate culture is all about. And I think that's the biggest thing: sharing ideas, sharing information, communication, collaboration. Those are all the important things of why people have an organization and have space. So it's going to be tricky with existing. Your office, I was there a few months ago. Exactly, like you're jammed in there. Okay, so do I have certain groups come in, you know, 3 times a week, certain groups that are more important come in 2 times a week? How do I still maintain culture? How do I still maintain FaceTime with them and physical presence and not isolation, which is working from home is isolation. And I don't believe productivity can be 100% when you're working from home.
I think that the productivity is a challenge. And I'll tell a quick story, because I went into our office yesterday as part of that sort of rotating initiative, people to come in. And, you know, the biggest difference for me is while I'm working at home, you know, as Aaron, you told that story, you end up working until 8, 9, 10:30. It might not be solid work, but you're constantly at it. What I realized yesterday was leaving the office at 5 o'clock, the walk home, I'm lucky enough to be able to walk home, was a signal to the end of that day. And it was the first time in 3 months that I sat down on the furniture outside, cracked a beer and was like, oh, I'm done for the day. Because for the last 3 months, it's never felt, it's so hard to draw that line of the barrier between stopping work and your home time. I found I was always drawn back to the computer to do another task or whatever it may be. So, that's another huge plus to go into the office.
I'm looking at this picture and it's so cute with these kids. And then I just know what, I can hear who's cleaning up the feathers. so again, it's like, it's part of it. Look, I think there's definitely going to be trends against it, but I'm gonna go into my bold statement now. So, I believe that if you're a landlord, you've got a vested interest that if your tenant is a company that wants to work from the office, then your interests are aligned, and the landlord should be doing everything they can to help repopulate and densify the building within guidelines. I'm not to get anyone sick, but to change that, to help them change that the employee behavior, incentivize employees to come to the building. And my first one is that if a landlord has any vacant space in the building, they should be giving it away for free. Don't yell at me, landlords, on a short-term basis to help their existing tenants bring back as many people as you can. Because one of the things that I've sort of seen is that as much as it's 6 feet is the regulations, your employees want 20 feet. So, okay, look, I want to get you used to acclimatizing back to the workforce. I'll give you that distance, get some extra area, and over time, that area will get squeezed back and back and back until where it again, hopefully by the time COVID's over, that you'll be able to fit everyone back into your space again, and it's another new normal. Right? So, it's really in the landlord's benefits to figure that out. If you've got that extra space, go get your best tenant and say, look, you want to get your people back in? Let's go. Because you may have retail on the ground floor of the building. They're not going to survive. They're not going to be there unless it densifies. And again, you're gonna if you give tenants more and more opportunity to work from home and go for that policy, they will in space over time. By the time for renewal, you're going to be having another discussion about taking back space. So I think there's this time right now. It really is in the next 30 to 60 days, and maybe more, maybe like right up until 2021, where landlords can't affect behavior of employees that are in the building to want to come to the building or come to the building and feel comfortable. And I know that some landlords say, hey, we don't give away free space, but I'm not telling you to give away for a long period of time, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, but I think it's really good. That might really change how tenants can bring back people into the building. And I've got a couple more, here's another one, offer food. I mean, I can tell you that one of the things that if you're with me at lunchtime, I'm buying lunch. That's been the rule for 16 years at Titan York. Anytime anyone's with me, they get a free lunch, free snacks. I mean, I have it delivered to the office, so they don't have to leave the office and go into the public areas. Use your current retail downstairs to supply lunch and food and snacks. Free parking. One of the things is, how do I get people, if maybe coming into the building is something I can overcome, taking public transit isn't, let's get those people back into the building off the free parking. Your parking lots are absolutely empty right now. So use them as a tool to help repopulate. Free car detailing, free dry cleaning. Bring your dry cleaning in, the landlord will do it for you. Free PPE. So, here's free masks. Here's miniature hand sanitizers if you can find them. Business card wrap. Well, I don't even know. I put that on there, but then you've got to pull a business card out. So maybe we'll take that one off. But I can tell you that every hour and a half, the lights on my floor turn off. It's the craziest thing. You have to go out to they've got it on some timer. If the
after hours,
yeah, it's the after hours timer. The office turns off. So you have to go out and push the button if you're in the office space. There's, even like, hey, send a painter around and touch up a couple of walls with paint, or you got a carpet tile that you fix, like anything. Other forms of, I don't know what it is that you can come up with, entertainment, although you don't want people congregating, but I think that's my bold statement, that landlords have a vested interest to use the existing vacancies or parking or current tenants or retail tenants to help repopulate the buildings so that they can actually turn the habits of the employees, that they'll be comfortable to come back into the building, incentivize them. I think that's really what you're trying to do, is that nobody, let them know that that they're welcome to come. So
I think that helps build that culture. Again, it's not just the corporate culture; it's the culture of going to work. And if landlords have the capacity, it'd be great to see. Obviously, it's a challenge, but a lot of these items can really help drive that attractiveness to get back to the office. It's an interesting idea for sure.
And again, going back to, this is March 16th, the vacancy rate is 2.6%, the same as the vacancy rate today as it was on March 16th. We're still frozen. It's changing this week. I'll let you know. Call me and I'll tell you what it is next week. But this week, there's no space. So when I say, give up vacant space, as spaces come back, I do know people walking from spaces. But as spaces come back, that's one of the ways that landlords can use their building vacancy to leverage the building for the future. So here's my takeaways. And Anthony, Howard, please, if you've got something that I haven't covered on, please put it in here. But I can't just make the space safe. Like it's not like, I'm gonna make it, put furniture in and everyone, put up signs. It's not just making the space safe. They have to feel safe. And that is a behavioral thing that is, and not a negative behavior thing, but that's a behavioral habit forming state of mind. And one is distance. I know that's the truth. The distance from another person will make you feel safe. And knowing that people are following the rules. What do you do when people break the rules? So I think that's part of it. I think that people are going to need more space. I know that sounds counterintuitive to the times, but if you are, call Howard. Figure out how to call Howard. Figure out how to figure out your furniture setup and how many employees can you really fit in there. A furniture solution is always cheaper than a construction solution. It really is. And then, get prepared. Like, get your broker to knock on doors in the building, find sublease space, get your broker to call your landlord, and start that process so that if you do need more space, that there's someone there to help you. That the landlord knows that you're one of those people on the list that are looking for more space. And I think also landlords should be one of those people that help those tenants lead the charge in the behavior to repopulate their building. A building that's unpopulated or low population or low density means just need less space. Don't want to be here, can relocate, and you're just, in the future, you're opening up your asset to vacancies. I think now's the time to take some action and take some, get people to feel safe in their space. Have I missed anything?
No, that's great.
Yeah, the policy and procedure that, as an employer, that you put into your company should be all about the safety of the staff. Yeah, and there is something that you said that I didn't put in here that I thought really rang true, and that is, as an entrepreneur, I've invested into this company. I need to, there's a different perspective as the owner than you have as the employee, and that's 100%. And I think as the employer has far more risk on the failure of the company than the employee does, in as much as that, yes, the employee covers his job. I'm not saying that, but there's just that much more right now. And there's also a level where the government
and rightly so, said, look, keep your company open. We're going to help you with your employees. We're going to give you all kinds of incentives. We're going to help you, keep them employed, but we're going to help you out. And, that has been one of the greatest saving things that I only good things to say about the government. Maybe, whether you're on the right or left, and it's irrelevant from my perspective when it comes to those savings. But, at the same time, it does, how do you tell someone where, they're not necessarily getting paid what they were before to, do these, take a risk and, come to the office. So, and I have one last story. I'm sorry. So after all of this, last night, my daughter, she's 14, she's turning 15, and she had a job at Sporting Life and was laid off. And she says to me, hey, they called me, they want me back to work. And I went, I don't know. So now here I am, I'm on the other side of the coin. My is it necessary that my 15-year-old daughter is going to work in a public area? So I perspective is everything, and I think that's my story for today. Is that as I was writing this and we were going through it, I found myself on the other side of the coin, and I felt the pressure. So there you go.
So I think we're at questions now. Actually, I'm going to jump in and use my panelist privilege to get the first one in here.
All right.
And it's for you, Howard. We're talking about what landlords could potentially do, in Aaron's big, bold statements. My question to you is what have you seen from landlords in terms of changing of furniture in common areas, in your lobbies of big buildings? And also on for sort of a part B of that, are you seeing any other, we've spoken about office, but are you seeing any particularly interesting strategies from either a retail or an industrial perspective, or you gave a great example of sort of a new outside of the box idea with those armchairs in the boardroom. Do you have any other examples of that?
Well, the same client, who is a large landlord, quite innovative, started right away with the wayfinding through their buildings. In terms of the lounge seating, they have eliminated it from the lobbies. We're working on that right now because they're basically sofas, and like we see it at most of the lobbies downtown. They took them right out. So we're trying to work on now is what kind of solutions. There'll probably be independent lounge chairs and the distancing, of course, but that's what they're doing. One of the cities that we have a contract for, it's been the hardest client to work with because they have recreation centers and they have emergency centers and places where there's a lot of people. That's the biggest challenge. The offices for us seems to be very easy. In terms of what the landlords are doing for clients, right now we've seen nothing. And it might go back to what Aaron mentioned just before, is that, right now they're not being, with a vacancy rate so low, they're not being hit, they're not hurting. Will that change? Possibly. But they've had a really, really good run. And so they're not offering much for the clients. We're finding the clients are basically on their own.
I have a question for you, Howard. What do you think this is from a question from the question Q&A. What is the square footage needed per person in the COVID age?
Again, no government legislation on this. So, what I think is, I'm not sure, but I think we're back to that, 200 square foot, maybe 250 square foot. It was quite liberal. I mean, in those square footages, we saw workstations that were 6x8. The workstation size don't have to change, but the space allocation has to change. So I'm not sure on that. And I think each space and each organization is different. When we talk about, for instance, my organization, we could spread out more and my sales group can work from home. The rest of the organization can't. So 12 of the 50 people, now all of a sudden I've got more space to work with. I'm not sure yet. So we're taking each case as it comes up.
Here's one. Toronto has the lowest vacancy rates in Canada. What incentive is there for landlords, even with a 5% vacancy rate? At what point, so the first question, at what point would they offer incentives? Will we see people move out of the downtown and spread out into the suburbs? So I'm going to take the first question. The first one is, Toronto has the lowest vacancy rates in Canada. What incentive is there for landlords, even with a 5% vacancy rate? You know, I said this, I said this to someone before when they talked about mortgagers giving mortgage breaks to lenders, to borrowers. And I said, look, if you're thinking that this is yesterday, this is not yesterday. This isn't March, it's March 16th. And in March 16th time period, the frozen COVID-19 financial paradigm is that everything that you're seeing right now is not what's real. The reality is coming tomorrow, and it's starting to get there. And if I'm a landlord and I've got an asset and I want to buy insurance to protect my asset, you know, there's an incentive that right now you work with your existing tenants to ensure that there is less vacancy in the future, that there's less movement out of your building. Because if there's more competition for tenants, then you're going to have to bring your rates down anyways. And any vacancy in terms of time period of lost income affects the bottom line right away in the valuation of the building. So, you know, right now you have an opportunity to do some pretty minor, cheap things to help tenants stay. At what point would they offer incentives? Again, give it a month. I don't know. I mean, I have clients who are going bankrupt and leaving. I have clients that are expanding. I have clients that are moving. The COVID-19 prophecy is nobody's right. So, you know, landlords will offer incentives when they have to and when they get vacancy. Until that happens, they're going to hold very strong, and I don't blame them. I would do the same thing. But, you know, that's why nobody's that has a lease expiring in the next 6 to 12 months is doing anything. They're just sitting, waiting to see what happens.
I think the key there is landlords want to be reactive in this situation. You know, generally it's an asset to be proactive, make the changes ahead of time. But until, you know, there's defaults or people moving out, there's no real strong benefit to make significant changes from a landlord perspective. And so I think they're going to continue to be reactive. And once, you know, the dominoes start to fall, then they'll start reacting to the situation at that time.
I have seen some movement on some landlords, and I got to give them credit. And I won't name the landlord, but I really appreciated what they did. My client, their expiry was at the end of May. The expiry of their notice period for the right to renew was at the end of May. And the client couldn't make a decision, and we requested an extension of the option to renew the notice period for another 2 months. And the landlord gave it up. They said, yeah, look, in 2 months from now, you know, you obviously are interested in staying. You know, this is a no cost give for me. You know, we'll give it to you. And so that's happened twice. I had another call yesterday with a law firm who was calling me for advice. And, you know, that was one of the things that their landlords were considering giving them in order to extend that. Will we see people move out of downtown and spread out into the suburbs?
We talked about this a little bit last week, and of course, you know, so much of what we're talking right now is speculation to some degree. There's no real trend emerging. You know, what we do know is many of the A-class landlords in the financial core are owned by REITs or pension plans and have capital to make changes to abide by these new criteria. And so, you know, I don't think we're going to see drastic changes in the financial core. I think vacancies are going to stay pretty low as they have been, because people, you know, who are still functioning are going to look to those A or AAA class buildings. We did talk a little bit about, you know, the suburb markets and okay, remove the capital capacities of those landlords, but it's also a public transport issue. Is, of course, you know, in suburb markets, you are accessible by public transport, but it's that much longer of a ride. You have to change from TTC to, you know, a Mississauga bus line or you know, Markham Richmond Hill. And so, you know, you could see some changes there, but at the same time, those rates in those buildings and the availability is higher than the financial core. So if you're taking additional space, you need an extra, you know, 30% space. You could move to a market like that and not increase your cost, but increase your space. So unfortunately, I don't really have an answer, but I thought sort of that was an interesting thought.
Look, I think that there will be demand in suburban markets because, and this is just what I'm seeing is that there will be a new normal, and part of that new normal will be providing more circulation space for employees, and it will require people, it will require to displace people. And if you're going to displace people and take on more space, you're going to take on cheaper space. The cheaper space is in the suburbs, and it's closer to your back office people. And I do think that the vacancy rates will stay strong downtown. Maybe not as strong as they are right now, but I mean, right now it's ridiculously strong. Like 6% is a landlord's market. It's 2.6%. So, you know, how far will it go? But I think you'll see people working in the suburbs, and I think you'll see the effects of people working from home. And you know, I think that will, yeah, I think the suburban markets will see a resurgence on some level. So, oh, the lights are going out. Like I said, I don't know if you saw that. Is that funny?
That's your time up.
Oh no, that's the warning. It actually gives you a warning, and then in like 5 minutes it turns off. You have to go outside. So I had someone running outside to help them. So I want to thank everybody, and
we have a couple more questions actually. Okay. I thought this would be a reasonable one for Howard. It's asking what the timeline is to retrofit workstations. Like if people have existing workstations, how much of a turnaround are we looking at?
That's a great question. Again, we're getting inquiries every day. Plexi is becoming a rarity in the marketplace. So if you're going to go ahead with this, or, you know, we're in stage 1 of recovery from Doug Ford's, you know, and the trend is moving very well. That, you know, you could be back in business by June or mid-June. And it takes, you know, at least 3 to 4 weeks to get this done, planned and done. So if it's something you're interested in, this is the time to do it. Don't wait till you're bringing back your employees, because you can't put a policy in place and then say, yeah, well, you know, when the stuff comes, we'll be fine.
Exactly.
What onus is on the landlord to ensure HVAC systems are up to a sufficient level? None.
Yeah, we spoke about this last week. You know, there's such debate about, you know, the effects of HVAC systems in buildings. Like if someone sneezes on the 7th floor, is it possible that someone on the 8th floor is going to contract the virus? And, you know, there's been some more recent studies showing that, you know, the air or the water particles from your speech, for example, if you're speaking loudly, can stay suspended in the air for 14 minutes. Whether it's possible for these to go through HVAC systems is not being determined, and everyone will have their opinion on that. And also the cost of revamping these HVAC systems is very high, considering the lack of information we have that it's going to be an issue. And, you know, we talk about air scrubbing and putting in more HEPA filters. The more filters you put into that system, the slower and the harder it is for air to pass through that HVAC system. So it's not a question of just popping in filters on every floor now, because, you know, once you have decreased air circulation, you're looking at a whole bunch of potential other issues. You know, maybe there's mold if it's staying there. So the answer is that there's no legal onus at this time. There's also no real guidelines to that. And I, in my experience, have not talked to any landlords that are addressing those issues at this time.
So I have actually, and they're putting in, there's new technology, like everything where there's a hurdle, you know, the human ingenuity is amazing, but you know, there are now placing, and the technology is there, I believe, to put in, not infrared, but like UV lights in the HVAC systems as the air goes by it sanitizes it, which I thought was really cool. I thought, like, oh, that's
I mean, the interesting thing about that is depending on the strength of those UV lights, is that you need some significant time in order to kill that virus. It's not like you can just run it through that UV light and it's done. I mean, there's some systems that take several minutes to do that. And although that's a very interesting idea, I'm curious about the efficiency of that.
What is the cost of retrofitting a workstation?
Sure. At a low end, probably around the $300 to $400 range. And you can go all the way up to, we've had one client that asked for stuff that is costing them almost $1,000 a person. So it's going to be an expensive change for some people.
Yeah, really. Do you guys have financing options too?
There is available. We use a third-party finance or lease, which they can look at as well. If, you know, if their furniture doesn't meet it and you don't want to throw a Band-Aid situation to that, then we can help with that. Maybe, you know, we build it into the lease. Maybe we work with some of the landlords to say, hey, you know what, we're going to keep a client for you. Here's the cost. How do we add that into we've got to be creative. We've got to come up with creative ways, and through discussion and through collaboration, there are lots of solutions.
Howard, I think it takes us to the end of our questions. I didn't push down before, but I really want to thank you for coming. Thank you for informing us about furniture, to giving us an idea of, you know, what entrepreneurism really means and how that, you know, translates to direction. Anthony, I want to thank you for always being there to tell me the right path when I'm not quite sure, and I really appreciate that too. And I want to thank you all for joining us again. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can give us an email. If you have any leasing questions, please give us a call. And next week we are going to take on investment real estate. When will the opportunity be there to buy? I think sounds like it'll be something like that. But that's what we're going for next week. We'll be talking about investment real estate, and we'll also maybe touch on a little bit what's happening in the retail market and what we're seeing from retail clients, and on that division as well. Have a great day. Thank you all. Again, be good.
Thanks for coming on, Howard. Appreciate it. And make sure anyone who's looking at those changes, you know, the first stop should be the furniture, and Harkel, you know, Howard would be happy to help out. He's been a great asset to us and our clients. So thank you for coming on, and thank you guys all for attending, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you. This is great.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.